Welcome, Brigitte and Dr. Stan Grof. Really excited to have you back on the show. I know our last episode that we did, I don't know, maybe a year and a half ago, 2 years ago at this point, was a huge hit. Everybody loved it. So we're excited to have you back. Thank you for your time.
Well, thank you for having us. We are very happy to be back as well, and had such a great experience with you. So we are happy to repeat this.
Yeah. So, Brigitte, you reached out, I guess, last week and wanted to kind of talk a little bit about this new book, which was really beautiful, called Stanislav Grof, LSD Pioneer, from Pharmacology to Archetypes. Could you tell us a little bit about this book and the idea around it?
Well, I connected with you because I have some nice information for the community, and eventually we managed to get the English edition of my birthday book that I made for Stan's 90th birthday, and it contains an interview that I did with him about his development over the more than 60 years of his research with LSD and holotropic states, how he started, were his theories and assumptions in the beginning, and how this changed and developed over the years. And he compares this actually with a treasure hunt. He had some ideas, and then the results he found, he had to change his thinking, his paradigm. And so it has never been described like that anywhere in that continuum over his life.
For me, it was a big surprise, and
Surprise.
The best one I have ever had. Birthday, yeah.
The best birthday.
Yeah, when I look at it, it's by far the best I have ever
had. Well, he loved that interview so much, and he thought it was so important to share with the world. So when his 90th birthday came, I got the idea to publish it for his birthday as a surprise. And but it was a little not enough for one book. So I combined it with the foreword he had done for Albert Hofmann's LSD, My Problem Child, because he's such a great description about LSD and the work. So it goes very well together. And I like pictures, and so I put in a lot of pictures and a nice photo gallery in the middle. I'll share you a photo of this, like an example. Quite unusual pictures of Stan, like this one.
People don't believe it that it's me when they look at it.
Well, one is on Easter Island. We had a spiritual wedding. And the other one with a sign on the forehead was in Mauritius on a Shiva temple, which is Stan's archetype, the Shiva. And in the back, in the front, I approached his old or long-term transpersonal friends, that to write him birthday wishes. Like we have Michael and Sandy Harna and Rick Doblin and so on. They're in the front, and in the back,
yeah.
In the Rick Tarnas, and in the back, I invited the colleagues and friends from the countries to write a birthday wish. And here, since this is the English edition, we have a very special contribution of John Buchanan. That's his birthday wish with his picture.
That was maybe one of my favorite
that was
pictures.
From a costume party we had called Heaven and Hell. So, and it came out in different languages. And always in the front, I have the old friends, and in the back, I have some colleagues from the countries. And so eventually,
it started in German, in Switzerland.
Yes, I called our friends in German, Nachtschatten Verlag, and I said, "Can we make this book? Are you in?" And they said, "Okay." And I called his brother Paul, and I said, "Would you please fund that project?" And he said, "Sure." So in 1 month, I made this book. We made that book, and it was really difficult. I mean, it was like night shifts, We all had other things to do, but it was so much carried by that spirit of love for Stan that you made the impossible happen, and it arrived a day before his birthday. And when he found it, he opened it and he was moved to tears. He
Yes, very much.
started crying. He said this was the best birthday gift he ever received.
I was going to say, it's such a beautiful book, and it feels like a nice mix of like personal with all the birthday wishes and the pictures, and so many great pictures. And also the interview, really learning a little bit about the evolution of LSD psychotherapy and your theories. And I just love the combination. It's such a beautiful book.
Well, it's really made with love for everybody, from everybody. You can
it was Brigitte idea because she realized that I have worked for 60 years working with LSD and other substances. And of course, things were changing. And I have never had where they ended at the end. And so this was a very good idea for her. For the first time, actually, we see it from the beginning to the end.
Yes. Well, to the so far end. You never know what else is coming. I hope Stan is going to live a long time. I mean, Albert made it 202, so we keep him very well fed and well taken care of to be with us as long as possible.
Did you mention this was this was his for the 75
of the 75th anniversary of LSD.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I have to throw in a little information here for those of you who don't know. Stan had a stroke about 5 years ago that affected his speech center. And
I had no extremities,
not paralyzed, thank God.
Yeah.
But it's just sometimes, and the mind works perfectly well as ever, but sometimes the finding of words is the wires are a little bit not so functional, and so sometimes the finding of words is difficult, and then I help out so that you understand that when I say something for him, that's the reason. I have a little bit become his voice,
Yeah,
I said Stan knows everything but doesn't find every word, and I don't know everything but I mostly find every word. So we make a combination here.
I mean, so many years together, that you probably would know everything that I say.
Almost, yeah. Almost.
Beautiful team at this point.
So is there anything you're interested in to know more about the book, or?
I would love to maybe dig into some of the evolution of the LSD psychotherapy. When I was reading through the book, I found it to be really interesting. Stan, you were discussing in some of those early days, you were talking about really working from the psychedelic framework. And we typically feel like we don't talk about that framework too much. And I would love to maybe hear a little bit more about that framework for those that don't understand that. And
I started with LSD, as many others, from chemistry and astrology also. Pharmacology.
Pharmacology, yeah. I have a nice photo for this. This is Stan in one of his early sessions.
Yeah, we had
getting all wired up, and tested.
I think brought about 40 different friends, who were experiencing LSD and some other substances. LSD, psilocybin, mescaline, and so on. And we did, many things that we were doing.
Tests, tests
with
EEG.
blood, with urine, with EEG, and so on. And I realized that after some time when we worked, that I really did not have much time to time what was happening.
Oh.
Yeah, because
you could not focus on the experience.
So many things were happening. Yeah. But in spite of it, I see that once in a while, when there was a little short time, that I surprised that people were in very, very different experiences. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then when we had these substances repeatedly, then again it was completely different. For example, if you would have LSD and then would have 4 weeks later, it would be completely different. And so I realized that this had nothing to do with chemistry. This had nothing to do with astrology, and with
Pharmacology.
pharmacology, yeah.
Pharmacology.
And that is basically about the psyche. And I became less interested in chemistry and went back to clinics,
Psyche,
working with patients, yeah.
And in the beginning, you were doing lower dosages. You were doing, psycholytic therapy, and you discovered that it was like peeling the onion. Can you say something about that?
This is one of my patients call it
peeling the onion.
Leaving the onion. And actually, it was very interesting because I can see, how at this each session as we were going, you get new insights. And at a certain point, we saw when it began with the problems that the patients had. And for quite a while, we ended up suddenly surprised to working with patients, with the.
Well, they had the eyes open in the sessions, yeah? There was
well, what was very interesting that as people were opening in eyes, that I was transferred with all kinds of different things, and at the same time, the environment of the place changed, and so it was very fascinating. Of try to understand, why it was, and using Freud with it, and I have many experiences. What the changes are happening, when I would experience like a jaguar, or like Hitler,
the patients would see
angel.
You. They would see you as different characters, yeah, depending on their experience.
And also looking around, one looked like to be in somewhere in tropics. Or somebody even be in Germany during
Nazi time.
I would like, yeah.
So you could see that the inner experiences were influencing the perception, yeah, of the outer world or of people.
Yeah. So this was fascinating in itself, but I also realized that it also takes too much time. And that the results are not as effective as later when I started increasing the substance, and also keep the eyes closed. Then we get much to where the problem was.
You got to deeper levels of the psyche.
And this also was interesting that at a certain point, the changes very much. People feel that they might die. They might go crazy. They will never come. And then sooner or later, we realized that what was happening, that they were living births of dying.
Their own birth.
On the birth. Which was, of course, something that psychiatrists and psychologists didn't believe, And actually, until now, although the first time that I created these different stages was only 50
years ago.
50 years, yeah. And still most of psychiatrists, psychologists still didn't believe that LSD and other substances can take you all the way to birth. So at a certain point, I created these 4 stages, actually. The first one was before the birth begin. The first matrix, I call them BPM.
BPM, basic perinatal matrices.
Basic perinatal matrices, yeah. And the first one was before the birth chart, before it began.
Before the onset of delivery.
And the second is then when that started, but there is no way escape from it.
The cervix is still
because
closed.
the cervix is closed. And the third one would be a situation when then these open up and the substances would start.
There's a strong propulsion through the birth canal.
Yeah.
Strong,
with the struggle to
energies.
And then the last one is coming out, So it was later was very, very interesting that together with Rick Tanas, when we were in Esalen together, we realized that each of them is related to a specific planet.
To the outer planets, the quality of energy, like the first matrix is related to, that's kind of oceanic, and it's related to Neptune, the archetype of Neptune. And the second, the perinatal matrix, where everything's closed in, is related to Saturn. And the third one, that's very dynamic, is related to the death rebirth, is related to Pluto. And the last one,
Uranus.
Uranus, the liberation and the birth coming out. So it's very interesting discovery.
So this is another very important step.
Step.
The step into astrology.
Well, it's more than the step into astrology. It's like when we follow the development that Stan took. I mean, we started with the pharmacology and then abandoned that one because it was not really explaining what was happening, and then later found that the perinatal level was the spiritual death rebirth was just a very, very deep process that actually has been known since millennia, basically, in the spiritual and world of mankind, but only the Western civilization, we have lost that knowledge or that connection. We have to regain it. And then he also found that from that level that there were so-called transpersonal experiences that were beyond that perinatal level. And then now in the later years he found that there's even a deeper level to that. It's the archetypal level, and which is actually forming and informing everything, including the perinatal level and the biographical level. And so the archetypal astrology is a medium that expresses that, and that can also be related to situations and certain sessions. So.
You'd mentioned also that it's not the patients who are having the experiences, but I started the experiences myself, of course.
Yes.
And so very quickly it was very clear to me that this was birth,
Yeah.
Whatever the psychiatrists, psychologists were saying, it was.
Yeah.
And,
I mean, it can't be denied, but when you watch people in these processes, you would see them, or if you experience yourself, you start having movements, involuntary movements that are like the movements through the birth canal, or the choking, you can't breathe, and then people can have bruises, can develop bruises like from forceps and so on, or when they get born, they just really cry like newborn babies. It's nothing you can just like make up. It just happens. Very convincing.
Right. And it's interesting when maybe you can also confirm it. I've been actually teaching a class, Stan, kind of based on your cartography with the psyche with Christine Calvert. And I've just been kind of digging a little bit more back into BPM theory and stuff like that. And I was thinking about it, like when, I guess, in history do we have access to some of these memories? And I think the introduction to LSD and some of these non-ordinary states maybe help us to get in touch with that, to maybe even think that that exists. And I remember during my first breathwork experience, I was having a good womb experience, BPM1, and I felt myself meditating. I was really calm. And I remember thinking I had a really low heart rate. And then everything came to an end, and I felt like I was suffocating, and umbilical cord wrapped around my neck. And I asked my mom about it, and she said, that's really weird because you almost died coming out. You have the umbilical cord wrapped all around you. And then she also mentioned, that's also really, when I mentioned the low heart rate, she's like, that is really strange because the doctors didn't even know if you were alive sometimes. Your heart rate was so low. And, and where does that information come from? How does that come up? And then to validate it, I think it's really fascinating. And you've created such a really wonderful framework to maybe help navigate or make meaning out of these experiences.
At the moment, when I realized that it was about birth, then of course, from the beginning to the end, I was always trying to find the what was happening at the time. Talk if I could talk with a mother or somebody. Other people who were around, they knew what was happening, to get an objective description, what was happening. And it was amazing, like how very frequently you find how accurately were found what was happening.
But it's more than just reliving physical birth. I mean, it's a really profound death rebirth process, and it's really convincing. It's kind of birth and death are very much linked, and you have very convincing feeling that you're actually dying or go crazy. And this is not an easy thing to experience. And I said to Stan, how could you have the courage to continue this yourself or with the people, And he had no clue what was going on and where it was going. It's so amazing. And he said, I was just so curious. This is, I think everybody who knows Stan knows that this is one of his character traits that is very prominent. So the curiosity took him to all these adventures. And I have to say, I'm extremely grateful for the map that he found, and he gave to all of us, especially in the way of the psychonaut, his life's work encyclopedia. All the knowledge is there, and when I go to these places myself and I get into the pits, I can, like in the back of my head, remember, oh, this is what Stan was writing about, so it should be okay, I'm gonna get out of this. Or so I think it's everybody who's doing these journeys should know about these Stan's findings. It's just so mega helpful. And
it was also fantastic, then as we were going, from the chemistry and that thing, to small sedation and then into the breathwork and so on, there was always sort of discovered something, but it was not all that. And going was
the next step.
So this is you talk about this
transpersonal level, this covering that, and then the archetypal. Yeah.
And then the whole thing looked like
I think I mentioned that before, but you described this like a process of a treasure hunt.
Yes.
Yeah?
Well, it was fascinating because we discovered sort of little something. It was exciting, but it was not completely
quite it. Yeah.
And that pointing another direction,
Yeah.
So, for example, for chemistry, going to this is a psyche,
yes,
and use small dosages, and bring
the higher
all the way
dosages.
to matrices, matrices, okay, and then some of the things that were happening. This was not all explained, but by the birth.
Yes.
Yeah. And suddenly all kinds of new things were coming up. I hope that in the meaning this what would be beyond, when you relive birth and so on, and yet this, then the whole universe will open up behind it.
Yes. Well, Stan really, he also loves treasure hunts in his personal life. He's really into that. So when he proposed to me, he didn't just bring a ring or something. No, I had to go for 1 hour through the whole house, up and down, and he made all these little drawings, and I had to figure out the next step, where to go for the next clue. There was, like, for instance, one painting was an ape who was boxing. And he had what was it?
Was two kids were fighting.
And then there was a little letter, so it was mailbox. So I had to go to the mailbox.
And there was a sign for a mail.
So I had to go to the mailbox and so on, and until after 1 hour, I finally found the ring, and there was something like
mailbox.
The ring. There was something. The last sign was like Wagner opera, of course. The ring. So well, but I made it. So
it's really fun.
So this was really quite amazing. Initially, when I saw the matrices, I was so excited because it seems it could explain some of the things that psychologists don't have, which is things about religion and so on. And this seemed to be, the first matrix was like a paradise or heaven. And the second was like hell. Going from 1 to 2 would be like losing out of paradise, lots of paradise.
Paradise lost.
And then you have the Pluto would be like
purgatory,
And then it was like the next one was like a death and rebirth. Yeah. And we actually see things from this paradise. You can see angels and so on, and in the second you can see devils, and the third one like purgatory and some other things. But at the same time, this could not be explained by
the fetus,
by the fetuses themselves, And then I had to open up another N, which was transpersonal, the transpersonal experiences, where everything that is physical, physical world, you can experience yourself, but instead of seeing it from the distance, you become yourself. You can become anything. You can become an animal. You can become a tree, and so on. So there was a whole range then from this what I call transpersonal experiences, and then even next one, which was the started seeing gods and archetypes, yeah, and so it was changing like this, and at the end, it really ended up in archetypes,
like the principles that kind of are behind everything, that are the general principles that show up in many forms, and it even goes further and further with where does all that come from, where does consciousness come from, and you end up in the things like Akashic Holofield of Erwin Laszlo and things like that. It gets really highly philosophical and spiritual. And somehow the perinatal level is like an interface between the personal and the transpersonal or the collective. Things are related. The micro and macrocosm becomes related in a strange way, and
like at the end, you end up, whatever you are working all the way down, you come to God.
Yes.
God
the spiritual realm.
I was saying that at the different places, like in ocean and in the earth and in the sky, they let some things help that goes behind it. Ultimately, find the God. It's, you know.
Well, there's this story of Muktananda, obviously, where he was asked, how God, telling that God was wondering where to hide the key to spiritual truth, and he was have conference with all the gods, and they had suggestions like, oh, you put it in the deepest ocean, or on the highest mountain, or on the moon, something like that. And God said, no, the human beings are going to go everywhere. This doesn't work. So the last place they're going to go is inside themselves. So let's hide it there. I like that story. That's why we go inward.
So it was very interesting starting from chemistry, and you end up to planets and archetypes and so on,
And God.
and God ultimately.
So I did maybe 7-8 years of reading your work, Stan, before really jumping into the deep end of psychedelics, but I spent a lot of time with holotropic breathwork before, and I found it endlessly helpful to have those frameworks and those experiences from breathwork before going in. Having an accidentally too much LSD and it actually being more interesting than bad in any way, because it certainly did not look good from the outside, but it was just fascinating, to become so many different things, to see so many different things, and to have the framework to go, okay, like this will end. This is amazing. And this is quite the adventure. I think it's the adventurous spirit, maybe. So thank you for all of that. I was actually curious about, we didn't get too into astrology earlier, but I was kind of curious about how you might see it utilized. I know Carl Jung would use it sometimes to get a sense of the client, but how do you see astrology being used maybe in psychedelic psychotherapy or holotropic states work?
Well, of course, you would have somebody who knows astrology, but it's for us when working with patients and so on, or working with friends. We just have to know that it's very important to look at the charts.
Yes, the natal charts.
And then you have to find somebody who knows how to do it, and then also somebody who knows enough about psychedelics. So there are people like Ren Atler, for example, or Rick. They are brilliant, for the archetypes, but at the same time know quite a bit about this LSD and that psychedelic.
Well, the idea is, of course, we're not talking about astrology like you find in the journals or something like that. It's the real knowledge of archetypal astrology, which is a science, and so if you get the natal chart of a person and you're schooled in that, you can really see what energies the person brings in life and what are going to be the challenges or talents and so on. It's really very helpful, even to understand children when they're born, to get a chart and which is well interpreted, to understand what the child brings in the world and how to possibly handle it or support that child in its growth and unfolding. And for the holotropic work, either breath work or psychedelic sessions, what we would do, or what a good archetypal astrologer would do, would look at the transits that are happening at a certain time and how they influence or activate or lighten up the chart. the natal chart. And again, this is archetypal astrology. You cannot say in that session this or that is going to happen. Of course not. I mean, but you could understand the energetic qualities at that time for that person. So there could be a time of a heavy Saturn influence. So that could be likely that the people could have experiences of the second matrix of constraint, but they also might work through some of that. You know, it's always a chance in there. Or it could be a certain time of Jupiter, Uranus, you know, lighting up the sun and whatever. So there could be a likely chance for liberating experiences at that time. But again,
you can have a range what would be with each of those.
Yes.
But at the same time, be all by itself. You know, you will not space Saturn and Uranus. You know, or
Well, again,
so there's a whole range of possibilities, but you don't know exactly which it's going to be.
no. But still, and so it's really interesting. I think in Spain, in the psychedelic training, they have also have the transits of the sessions, so they can make a research about that. That's really a really interesting field of research, you know, to see what will be is the content eventually of the session, and what is the transit for the person at that time. So it's really valuable to write down your date and time of the sessions that you're doing, so you could maybe later, you know, get together with an archetypal astrologer.
You know, so if you are a psychologist, psychiatrist, therapist, you can be working with patients who are very, very difficult, you know, and so it's very good to look at it and choose for better time. I was not doing it. I was more curious. It's going to be, if it was a bad one, if it's going to be as bad as it seemed to be, because I wanted to know, you know, rather than try to
to avoid something. You wanted to know everything, experience everything.
But it can be very useful when you work with very difficult patients where it would be problems, you know.
We used to run this little segment called the Cosmic Weather
Yes.
Report with Ren, just kind of looking at the monthly transits. And to some degree, we got a little pushback from some of the folks in the psychedelic world, especially more from the science world. And so I wonder, like, and, you know, part of the reason why we wanted to really offer that segment was because obviously, you know, our work is really based off of your work, Stan, and really trying to continue that and educate people around it. So how could you, I guess, like talk about this archetypal astrology to somebody that is very scientific minded and say that's a bunch of like new age kind of stuff, and why would I ever incorporate that, or why would I ever listen to the astrology?
Well, the people, you know, I remember when I first went to Esalen and then I came back to Germany. I mean, for me, this was a whole new world. I was 26 and, you know, spiritual massage without even touching people. And that was really weird. And then holotropic breathwork, of course, I could only accept it because Stan was such a down-to-earth scientist in a way. So I could just accept the most outrageous things out of his mouth and his experience. And then, of course, starting to have my experiences. And then when I came back, my brother would pick me up, my older brother, and I would tell him immediately everything exciting I experienced. And he was very interested. So one day I came back and he picked me up and I said, "You wouldn't believe this is so interesting, you know, this archetypal astrology and the relation to the processes and the planets." And he said, "This is my edge, you know, don't tell me that there's a piece of stone out there in the space that would influence me. This is too much, you know." Here is my edge. And I thought it was such a probably good, what people say who don't have an understanding. Of course, it's not, you don't feel like this or that because Pluto is at so and so many degrees in the sky. I think you have to understand the principle of synchronicities.
You know, you are actually asking a very, very interesting and important question in the book. You said, how come that it's stones somewhere inside could make influence
Yes.
us and what influence what's happening in the world in the history.
All right.
And this is nothing actually with those stars.
With the stones in the sky.
Stones.
The stars.
People usually, because they're people so materialistic, they think that they believe that somehow you are saying that it's actually coming from the stars.
Yeah.
Something like
The stones
aerations or
sending some radiation
and so on.
that goes on you personally on the earth.
And so we talk in this book about it. This is you have to completely look at this whole issue here. That you have to think that the universe was created by amazing intelligence, that was able to connect.
Everything is connected.
Together with archetypes. So it has nothing to do with this, but they're moving in certain thing, and when this is happening, it activates the archetypes.
Yeah, you can see.
And then from the archetypes, influence us and influence the.
Yeah, it's like an energetic phenomenon that's kind of could. It's like when you see in your car how much gas is in there because you have this finger. What is it called? Is it finger that shows you it's half or something? It's not making your car half full. It just shows that it's half full. You know what
that's
I mean?
A great one with the chime.
Oh?
Yeah.
So it's the same way that the radio doesn't make the music. It just broadcasts the energy that is there, and so, or the brain is just broadcasting consciousness, but it's not producing it. And so I think that's the reason why it's hard for people to understand, is because they would have to change their whole thinking paradigm. It's like it's hard to understand without a deeper philosophical revolution in your head. And so you can recommend the book to read. Maybe that helps.
Yeah, this is like this. We cannot sort of find out what time is happening. We need all kinds of things that are correlated with time, and we find out what it is. For example,
the watch. We have a watch,
or there is in church or somewhere
a clock in the church tower.
Yeah.
But they don't make
at the same time. We know that it's going to be at the time happening in television.
Yes.
So all those things we can see and we can use also.
Yes.
For time.
But the clock is not making the time.
Yeah.
And the planet
so
is
in
not
the same,
making
the planets
the
don't
event.
change anything. But there's sort of happening, with the archetypes.
It's a synchronicity of
and the archetypes influence what's happening in the physical world.
So you can actually read the archetypal energy that's activated at a certain period of time, and then you can see how that can correlate with your archetypal energies that you brought into life, and so certain aspects of your energies would be activated or lighten up by what's happening in the world, what's happening in, we have the world transits, and then we have the personal transits relating to your personal archetypal energies. So it's a bit hard to explain, but it's not that the piece of stone out there is not the causing your emotions or something like that.
You have to know there is a being that we can't even imagine,
Yes.
Exactly. In the non-ordinary stages, we get an idea what it is.
About the cosmic intelligence.
But something that was capable to organize this way, it's an amazing thing.
Well,
at the beginning, when we work with psychoanalysis, it's
with psychedelics,
it's how is it possible that it's such a connection, between what's happening and in these archetypes, and then it's a different when you realize that it's creating from above. The idea that it's possible to change, look at the stars and see what's happening with people and what's happening in the world and so on. That's an amazing thing. But if it's really it's creating from the
It's not created from the stars.
Yeah.
It's
It's sort of organized from the beginning.
It's from the cosmic consciousness, from the divine cosmic consciousness, and just gets like visible or understandable or by certain
means.
means.
That they started in the physical world, and that they're looking and see what's happening and check what's happening with the stars. That would be a very difficult one.
Yeah.
Well, but people have experience that understand, how the universe is created.
Well, Stan said,
I know that Rick had this kind of experience, and suddenly.
Well, and you said that actually Stan said that from all his findings, he started from kind of biography and pharmacology, and he was going to the perinatal, transpersonal, archetypal. But then it was like suddenly like a reverse process. Once he realized that there were the archetypes and there was all comes from the cosmic consciousness, it was more like looking down from that, because to see that the cosmic consciousness and the archetypes were kind of influencing everything until the here and now. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of.
But the brilliant people cannot accept this astrology because they think how it's seen from the physical world.
Yes.
Like I had this once when. Sagan, Carl Sagan, who said this is a bullshit, this can you, as you have a much influence on me here, is
piece of rock.
What?
A piece of rock.
Well, with Pluton,
Pluto, yeah.
Well, he has much more influence. With his body
on you
rather than
Pluto.
Pluto,
Yeah.
Because he's trying to think in terms of physical thing.
Well, I think you said yourself that accepting archetypal astrology was the biggest step or the most outrageous step you've ever had to take. And I really think it's still a big misunderstanding, as I said before, that somehow in the public understanding, astrology is still seen as something flaky, and not, entertaining, but, like, oh, you are Libra, this week you will have good luck, or love is good for you this week or this month or something like that you can read in certain magazines, so that's out there a lot. So the understanding that this is a really deep, serious science I don't think has arrived in everybody's mind yet. And as Stan, Stan, he's a serious scientist. He would not accept anything flaky at all. Again.
No, it was with Rick and me.
And Rick Jonas as well.
It was very hard. He said he's the last thing that we would look at,
He's one of the best and most profound philosophers and thinkers of our time. I would say, here you see that book. You want to say something, Joe?
Thank you. It's just an incredible book that Rick Tarnas put together here, Cosmos and Psyche, in service of this argument. So if somebody's actually really curious, I think this would be a good place to dig in on the astrology topic.
Yeah. Well, and Stan and Rick have been teaching this Psyche and Cosmos course together for many, many years. And now Becca Tarnas actually is taking it over at CIIS, at the Institute of Integral Studies. She's amazing. I mean, she's got this fabulous Tarnas mind and spirit. And so we are so happy. Actually, she's doing Stan's biography right now. Yeah,
I heard that.
Really
it's
cool.
Amazing.
We're very happy that she's doing that. We spent many hours with her and traveled together to Prague and Stan's birthplace with his brother Paul and Becca and her husband Max. And it's really great. She's so, I mean, she's researching everything, you know. I don't know how she can keep all this information in her brain. She's a genius. So we're very much looking forward to what's going to come out of that.
It's very amazing, you know, with Rick or with his Dan, when you do this working with LSD and some other substances, it's amazing because they can tell you now what kind of trance you have. This is what happened to somebody, you know, in the histories, you know. They always see you what kind of people in the world had the same kind of chart.
Transit or chart.
Yeah.
Well, there's
like
also
Saturn and Pluto, you know, and
Rick has shown that very much in his books, and also they created this fabulous film, The Changing of the Gods. Have you seen it?
I was like an early contributor to whatever it was called, a Kickstarter. I don't think I ever ended up watching it, but I should try to dig it up and find it.
If you look at them, there are 10 of these
episodes,
and if you look at the first one and then the 7 and 10 until 10, those are the most interesting, most relevant also for psychedelics, you know.
Well, I think they're all interesting and relevant, but some are really very, very, very outstanding and showing the transits and the qualities of time and what was happening in the world. It's really amazing. Can really recommend that film, no? The Changing of the Gods.
Really something to look at, yeah.
You know, I have given up convincing people who are not sharing this worldview on a mental level, because their mental level is so different. I found the only thing that could give them any change or interest would be by having a holotropic experience with breathwork or psychedelics, and then if they experience something from within, that would be very different than making it a mental discussion, you know. And I like it anyway, because that's how I proceed. I don't believe anything until I experience it. And then when I experience it, I could read after it later. Or I think that's a very good way of researching. And I really recommend, if people are interested in these things, that they get experiences, you know.
Just even thinking about the title of your book and some things that you've mentioned a few times of when you started LSD research, saying, I realized we weren't doing pharmacology, right? We were working with psyche. And I mean, even that's radical, just thinking about where we're at in the psychedelic field, and everybody's focused on kind of like the pharmacology and neuroscience, but to take more of this like depth-oriented archetypal approach, it is a different way of thinking about things. And I feel like sometimes people even might have a hard time accepting that. It's like, oh no, it's the neuroscience and the pharmacology that's like impacting somebody's experience, versus thinking about it more from a depth-oriented approach or an archetypal approach, that you're having an experience of psyche, you're having an experience of yourself, and these are just an amplifier of that.
Yeah, I don't really understand that attitude, because I think if you take a high-dose session and in an inward setting, with eye shades and a safe setting and a good person, experienced person accompany you, I mean, how can you not have an intense experience of these realms? I don't understand. And we discussed that a lot. That it's about, one of the goals is to eliminate any experience and just ingest like psilocybin or something like aspirin, and then your depression is gone. And we were like, I don't know how that would work, because we believe that change or healing comes from integrating or expressing what is blocked and making these experiences and integrating them. And eventually, I mean, the adventure of this whole thing, or the secret of life lies in the profound death, the rebirth mystery that humans have shared all over the planet forever. And it's about spiritual awakening and not taking a pill and not having a depression anymore. I mean, that's nice, but I mean, isn't there so much more about what we need to find out in order to live fully? And I don't know. I mean, that's at least my goal or our goal. So
Well, you can imagine if this LSD sort of fake in my bag,
fell in your lap.
for a lab,
Not in your bag.
It was amazing because we knew that there was nothing else in the nature,
Yeah.
There were these mushrooms and so on, there were psilocybin and so on, but with LSD it does not exist in nature. It had to be. It's something similar, but it has to change.
Synthesized.
But, so it's like every session, my session and my patient sessions, were a tremendous surprise. What's going to be, what's going to happen.
Happen next.
It was quite amazing. We were asking questions about it. It was very difficult. As difficult it was difficult to let it down and not to do it.
But so exciting.
I knew there was something really amazing
for
there.
you.
Yeah.
We were so excited. So.
Stan, do you think there's a difference in how LSD experiences came out and expressed in humans compared to things like mushrooms and ayahuasca, given the vast history of use of the other substances?
Well, what turned out that there was something that's very close to LSD, which Albert, analyzed, and then when he realized that it was close, then he said that we should actually look at the LSD as being part of these South American psychedelics.
Okay.
They're very similar. It is the LA, it's called made of these
the Mutterkorn.
plants.
The Mutterkorn. Oh.
It's what people usually didn't believe, that it's possible that they're close, because fungus, is very low on the level, and these the plant.
I don't know the English word, but in German it's called the Mutterkorn. It's on the wheat,
Well, that's fungus.
It's a fungus.
Yeah. But the one that is very close to LSD is actually made of plants that have it is it's plants, It's just very far in the, and so actually when Albert came with it, they said you just have LSD all around in your, and you just sort of put it into it somehow by mistake,
Okay.
and didn't believe that he actually get it out of plants.
Okay.
And said, "Oh, come on, it's a very present." Yes, to tell him that he's put it somewhere in his laboratory, by mistake.
Don't tell a Swiss chemist that he does things by mistake. Well, I also want to say that I think what is so important is that Stan's findings are actually a rediscovery of old knowledge that has been around forever. It's like the bridge of psychology, science, and spirituality that he has gifted to the world is actually helps us to remember who we really are. And if we take away these insights and coming with the process, we are missing the point, So that's what we think, and yeah.
I can go back kind of to Joe's question, and Stan, you mentioned on the Tim Ferriss podcast that you kind of defined psychedelics as these non-specific amplifiers of mental or psychic processes, but I think maybe your experience with ayahuasca, or just maybe hearing about people's experiences with ayahuasca with, say, the serpent, maybe you would change that definition. And I'm curious, like, what are your thoughts around that? Like, are there different qualities there between LSD and ayahuasca? And like, how would you maybe differentiate the two?
There are also some other of them. What is really the same is that you find the same kind of what people can experience with this. For example, something from happened in your childhood. Some things, the birth, some of the articles and so on. But they also have some differences. For example, many people in ayahuasca, they have experience with things from the tropic.
The jungle.
From the jungle, yeah, including like jaguar or the snake, yeah. And another one is in Africa. It's also has things from the African. We have
the
ibogaine, yeah. It's that has things from Africa, and at the same time, then going back somehow to past, in the, people from the generation and so on, and all the ways to paradise. Paradise, yeah.
Paradise.
So they have different, some different experiences, but basically it's going to be something from change from your
personal history.
Yeah, all the same kind of experience, like what I said. This
they all have in common the perinatal, biographical, and transpersonal archetypal things, but they have certain qualities. And I mean, the ayahuasca, as you probably know, is a kind of a really whole system purging medicine. I mean, if you like to throw up, you take ayahuasca. It really works. And
colors, for example, exists, in mescaline particularly, and quite a bit of LSD, and a lot of marijuana also. But MDMA does not have very clear.
Not so visual. It's more
sometimes
emotional.
Most people experience that it's like almost like a fantasy, it doesn't come very as clearly.
Yeah, it's like each psychedelic has a certain tone.
Like a thought.
Insights or ideas. Has a certain quality, but generally can lead to the same experiences or the same levels of the psyche. Let's put it that way. And then they have some cultural, archetypal, or special aspects that tend to happen with it.
Yeah, also the taste,
some taste
LSD
good,
does not have any.
Some have a taste, some have a bad taste, some have a good taste.
The mushrooms are people who like it and they love it.
I don't think anybody likes to drink ayahuasca.
Mescaline,
Mescaline is not so nice. Peyote is not so nice.
Yeah.
I think.
So those are quite different.
Nice. You don't taste it. you don't want to have it on your tongue. So does that answer the question?
Yeah. Thank you for that.
And definitely also has a relation to spirituality,
Yeah, and there's also differences in the duration or in the speed or something, or in the levels they reach. I mean, the MDMA is kind of not doesn't go as deep in the levels like or as high as, like, for instance, 5-methoxy DMT that can kick you out there in seconds. So there are differences.
And also how much, will it take?
Yes.
LSD would like maybe 6 hours to 9 to 8 hours and so on.
How long?
And
Yeah.
when compared this,
The 5-methoxy comes on immediately, goes for
Yeah.
15 minutes, but you have quite an
and
experience.
why was this 5 and perfect?
Thinking about that from a clinical perspective, do you see LSD coming back into clinical use, or would you see some of these more shorter acting substances come back
I think
for
that
clinical use?
It's very difficult to work with psychiatrists, with psychologists, LSD. If you would like to actually work specifically with the patients, what I was doing, sitting there all the time for like 5 hours, 6 hours,
Well,
and then
longer, 9 or 10.
and pass it. I was passing it to the nurses and my other
you had
patients
nurses.
because they also everybody was having experiences.
Yeah, but it's a very long
But
session.
like Leuner, in Göttingen in Germany, he has a ring, and the patients were lying, and only if there's a problem they are calling.
No.
So he never sort of actually be
terrible.
together with it.
We also don't do psychedelic work on the computer.
So I think from that
No.
perspective, it's
Telemedicine.
ideal is there 5-methoxy, with from the
Yes, I mean the quality of a high dose LSD session with a good guidance or a sitting is just amazing. So this should have a space in the therapeutic
I don't know, but
realms, and also the mushroom sessions, high dose mushroom sessions, because they should not disappear just because it's too expensive or too long or anything like that. And ideally, there should be a whole. I mean, Rick Dublin was saying that, like in the MAPS psychedelic conference, that ideally you have like centers where all of these different things are available, with good quality and good therapists or sitters, and so you can choose according to what suits you, and but now we live in a world where things have to be cheap and fast and everything and make a lot of money. So that is a danger that everything is seen under that perspective. But what is certainly a very, very valuable and usable tool is the 5-methoxy DMT, because it brings you, first of all, right where you need to go, and it comes on immediately. It doesn't have a very long lasting time, and you can always decide after a while, after about 15 minutes, do I want to take another step? Do I want to go deeper? Do I want to go further? So you could actually within let's say 2 hours, including the introductional talk and the integration talk, you could have a wonderful session with a person, and then let them stay and write down their experiences in a kind of a living room or waiting room, something, or make a painting and have a tea and so on. So you could easily have like 3 great sessions a day with people who really, I mean, we are so impressed what you can experience and work through in 1 hour compared to 1 hour of normal
I just
therapy.
started talking about it,
Yeah, I know.
5-methoxytryptamine,
My
I think that's going to
DMT.
be in the future. That would be an ideal.
It's a fabulous
Where
tool.
actually psychiatrists, psychologists can themselves work with it, because within an hour they can have a very powerful experience. They can actually break through some important things, and that you can have a spiritual experience within an hour of a Freudian
Psychoanalysis,
session.
and so is what you say. And you can basically get up and walk out. I mean, that people shouldn't do that. They should stay and should integrate. But you can get up and function and not like, have to deal with this 10-hour sessions, and then or like with MDMA the next day you're basically totally exhausted. This kind of thing.
And it can building up, and it can be maybe, like 2 hour would be very powerful kind of experience.
But I mean, talking about this, we still make a big emphasis on integration. Even if you can have a 2-hour session, you should not go in your car and go back to your job. No. I mean, it is as important as the session is the time and the situation of integration. First of all, for the really good integration we are often asked how to integrate it. We recommend that you have a therapist who knows our kind of body work, releasing body work. If there's anything still blocked or stuck in the body, that could be really released and integrated with this kind of body work that we are teaching. So that's the best step of integration for the session, of that portion of experience from that day. But then also people should have time after. They should have nice company, somebody stay with them from the session, and they can draw the experience, they can write it down, they can take a walk in nature and take the next day off, so really take time to process that state, the insights that you had, and give that time. We just live in such a fast society. Everything is more and more and quick. That's not more is not more, and quicker is not better. So we all need to slow down and allow the other side in us that is feeling and dreaming and experiencing to unfold and to balance this kind of life we lead. So if somebody is not ready to take that space and time, they shouldn't do sessions. That's our experience.
Also, the person is allowed to experience sounds and anything, whatever.
Yes.
The way it's happening in the breathwork or in LSD. So, but they have to have a special place.
Yes, you need a place where you can be loud.
You can make loud, yeah.
You don't call the police when you're yelling. So
having the police show up mid-workshop is never fun.
It's not. It's so fun. It reminds me of when I started therapy, was actually participating in Reiki therapy, and my therapist was working, and he had an 8-year-old daughter in the house, and so I was having a session, and I was loud, and the doorbell was ringing, and there was the neighbor, and said, "What is happening here?" And the girl said, "It's not a problem. My daddy is working. Everything's okay." She was so used to it, That was really good. Well, I think doing this work, you get so used to these forms of expressions that you just don't think they're very unusual, unless somebody comes in there who hasn't been exposed to it, and then they get a little scared.
It's very true. Very true.
Isn't that true?
Yeah.
And I mean, speaking of holotropic breathwork, or Grof breathwork, as we call it now, when you're the people come in the first time. When I had my first session it was a huge group, like 250 people, and I thought, Jesus Christ, this is a madhouse here, but I really like it. So it was totally crazy, but I thought it was great, and but then when you hear what people say later, or you see the creativity and the power of energy that gets released, then the liberation, it's so amazing and so healing and very exciting. And the people sometimes say, "Oh, how do you live with all that screaming?" And I said, well, it's music in my ears, because so much of the suffering is silent. So when these things come out and they get expressed, they're leaving the system, and people get liberated. So once you understand that, then you're good. But that requires circumstances where you're safe to be loud, of course.
You probably know we have done very, very large sessions, particularly with breathwork, up to 460
That was the biggest in Moscow.
It's in Moscow, with about 75 facilitators.
Wow.
And it's great because then you have very powerful music, and when a lot of things are happening, it's very easy to go with them. Whereas if you do it alone, that you're such aware of what's happening to you, but
not alone, but alone with the therapist. We're not doing this alone.
But there you don't know what's happening from the people in the breathwork, or what is happening from the room. What's happening from the music and so on. We have in it some things that were done actually from Africa and other places, where people when having the sounds themselves, and then they're coming into the breathwork,
the tribal
that they
music.
don't know what's people are doing it, or where it's coming from Africa,
Well, it's much easier to go into process or give yourself permission when you get inspired by what other people are doing and what is okay to do, than on a one-to-one basis. That's, in the beginning, when these energies are emerging, it feels like, oh my God, what is happening to me? This is weird or strange, and am I okay? Then when you see that what happens to all these people and they are fine, it's much easier to accept it for oneself. Or sometimes people say, I had a person in a group, and a woman was standing up and she was screaming like this, and she said, I want this in my next session. I want to have this, So it's really encouraging and inspiring people. Then when they are sitters, we have breathers and sitters. So being a sitter is very inspiring and encouraging.
One of my favorite workshops was at Omega Institute. It was an insight and opening with Stan, you and Jack.
With Rick.
With Jack, not with Rick. With
and
Jack.
It was amazing.
With Jack, insight and opening.
Jack.
Yeah, it was incredible.
Yeah.
And the amount of people in the room, absolutely, I agree. It gave license to folks. I saw some wild things that I...
Was with Jack, yeah? With
Jack Cornfield, insight and opening.
Yeah, those were great.
And I wonder do you think that's the biggest utility in the large workshops? Is the kind of permission to open up, given you get to see all the other people expressing in different ways? Or what do you think the biggest utility is in large workshops?
I think it's a bit like, when you have a big city, they usually consist of little villages, kind of little departments or little towns, and it's a little bit like this in the huge workshop. You have your own group with like 20 people with your facilitators, and you kind of combine all these groups to a big group. So what happens is that you have the safety of your regular group, but you profit from the big energy field of all these people who go together at the same time into that state of consciousness. And I think that's what facilitates is the difference of a huge group.
But it really can be great to be in a large group,
Yeah.
Because
field.
of some of the things that I mentioned before. But then it's ideal to have groups of facilitators, and then have breakouts
in a small group,
so that you have small groups when people are working in it afterwards, Yeah. So
it's a little bit like when you're singing in a small choir, or you go sing with a couple of hundred people, you would feel that collective kind of sound that's carrying you. I think that's a little bit comparable to that. So it's a very opening in a way.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we just had that fabulous workshop before the psychedelic conference in Denver with 240 people.
That was like 200 something.
Yes.
Right?
It was
Wow.
really
240.
It was great.
And half of it were for the first time. They've never did breathwork, And it was almost like the same,
Yeah, it was great. It worked.
I know we're probably getting at time, but I'm curious, how do you see the evolution of breathwork unfolding in conjunction with psychedelics?
You know that I talked with Stan quite a bit about that, and it was interesting what he said in the retrospective. You know, sometimes or often when you look back after a time, you can just see why things unfolded, that there is a wisdom in how they did, even when things change, you might experience as a handicap or something. So when the psychedelic work had to stop, that was of course a big bummer and a problem. But out of that, he and Christina were able to, or forced to, create holotropic breathwork because the Stan moved to Esalen and took a sabbatical to write books and had to offer some workshops which were theoretical, and the people got annoyed with hearing all these fantastic stories and seeing all these paintings of the people from psychedelic sessions, and they said, we want an experience, don't you have anything here? And he couldn't, was not allowed, so he couldn't offer anything, so he had to figure out something. And he was remembering that actually sometime when people were not completed in psychedelic sessions, they had some pain there or something, and asked him to push there, and then
They actually
they expressed it, and or were vomiting or something, and they suddenly felt great.
and the patients were the ones who were asking.
Yeah, they were asking and so he discovered the releasing body work. But also what he found is that they sometimes went back into some breathing patterns by spontaneously, not, he didn't tell them anything, and later they reported that the faster breathing brought them back into these holotropic states. So that's what he remembered, and he thought, well, let's try it out. Let's people have lie down and have them breathe faster, and put on some music, as they used music in the psychedelic work, and suddenly the people started having experiences. And that's how the holotropic breathwork was developed. And then then even as an addition, one day he and Christina had a huge workshop with 45 people from all over the world, and he had been working in the garden with a big piece of wood, and his back came off. So he wasn't able to do any body work in the workshop. And so they had to be creative, and they decided to pair up the people and have them have sitters and breathers, and tell the sitters to help with the body work. That's how the whole thing with the breathers and the sitters came up. And that was so successful that they never abandoned that. That's how actually all of these elements, holotropic breathwork, was created. And in a way, when you do psychedelics, there is always a temptation to attribute the experiences to the substance. But when you do breath work, there's not much to attribute. I mean, this is you, definitely. This is your psyche with a little breathing. I mean, come on, this is not a big hexing or something. I mean, this is just you. So to find that people had access to the psyche was again validating that it is the psyche and not the substance. And then finding that even spontaneously these experiences can happen. So he says now, this was such a valid finding period, even kind of like the bridge between the psychedelics coming on again and the breath work is, many people are afraid of psychedelics and they are not afraid of breathing. So it just gives an opportunity for many people who wouldn't even do psychedelics to access these states and the healing that comes out of it. And they might even be later interested to psychedelics. And the work in the group and the trainings that we offer to learn that is so important, and also very good for psychedelic therapists. I mean, if you know how to work with holotropic breathwork, you are just super well foundation for being a psychedelic therapist. You just need to add the psychedelic experiences, but to follow the inner healing intelligence, to support whatever emerges from within without interfering, without imposing anything on people, really trusting that inner healing force that is in everybody is so important. And then knowing Stan's theory and having your own experiences, experiencing the body work, the sitting for the people, see what happens in a group, all these experiences, and then training this for 3 years or so gives just an amazing psychedelic training, or basis for psychedelic training. You know, many people think I don't know why they think they can be psychedelic therapists without even having any experience. I compare this with somebody who wants to be a pilot who has never even flown in an airplane as a guest. I mean, it's really strange. So our passion is to really train people well for the psychedelic work or for the holotropic work and Grof breathwork. Yeah. So
It's
it's
out
a very
of the problems is this something very interesting came up.
Yes. You wouldn't want to miss. You know. So now he says this is valuable.
Actually, people can use breathwork as a preparation for breathwork
for psychedelics.
Work.
Yeah, or just do breath work because or they can deal with spiritual emergencies. You know, I mean, there's so many yoga trainings in the world, and the people have no idea about Kundalini that can be awakened by doing this. You know, and so knowing how to deal with these processes is just a fabulous gift that anybody.
You know, it actually started after LSD.
Yes.
It
developed out of it, actually. Yeah. It's a product of the psychedelic
even
therapy.
At the beginning, you know, I thinking that this LSD is such a powerful substance. There's nothing that can sort of come close.
Yeah.
And so surprised what we see now.
Yeah.
Actually, when at the beginning, you know, we prepare people.
Yes.
They're relaxing and so on. Yeah. And some of them people start going before they start breathing fast. Yeah.
Just by the permission.
because they might have at home but holding on. Yeah. And they were afraid to do it. And they know that people would take care of it.
Yeah.
They just allow themselves, just let go.
Well, I think that's a main attitude or support for the psychedelic and the holotropic experience is by an experienced facilitator or therapist is to give the person the idea or the feeling that whatever emerges is fine and it's okay, you know, because, and you would know if that's true, what they say, if they believe it or not. I mean, you can't fake that one. I mean, and you can only be okay with these things when you have experienced them yourselves. I mean, nobody can guide you through a death rebirth process who hasn't been there themselves. And so this is really, really deep work. And I mean, the other cultures have shamans who have been trained with this, and the Western culture, we have to figure it out ourselves, you know, and it requires a deep understanding and training to deal with these states, either in the breathwork or in the psychedelics. That's our message. Might be a good ending. What do you want to say?
Something great that also came out of breathwork, you know, was the healing,
intelligence,
psyche intelligence.
Yes.
I don't know. We haven't talked about
it. We talked about it. Yeah, it's
not okay. Here, but
it comes from
in the past. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the criteria of your work, to follow from the inner healing intelligence, what emerges from within, and not coming from the head, and have a plan.
So that's something that came out of breathwork.
Well, also of the psychedelics, not only breathwork.
Well, part of it was from Freud working with dream, and then something that happened with Jung, you know, who didn't want to work dream with the past, and like what Freud was doing, you know, working with
interpreting old dreams. Yeah,
like Freud did one with somebody in a train and tell him about dream that he had 20 years ago, and Freud, you know, interpret immediately. And when Jung didn't like this, when patients came, them lying down, and they wanted to go back with the dream, And what he said that very simply what was happening, that something that was very charged and came close to the surface, that actually started coming out,
emerging. Yes. Yes.
And so something similar happening with when we do breathwork. Then you add to it breathing, and actually the intelligence, it brings its own.
Yes,
thought,
what is close to the surface.
And then, of course, bringing then LSD, psychedelics,
yes,
it's even further. So
yeah, but it all works.
But the idea is to always work with the psyche. You know, you don't need any specific tracks. You know,
tricks.
Tricks.
It's good for lazy therapists. You don't have to have a plan. You just sit there and support what happens.
Well.
I did find in some of my ketamine work, it just sometimes would naturally come up and not needing to engage as much. So I agree with that. Yeah. Awesome. Well, I think this is a great place to close out. Is there anything that you would like to close with? I mean, maybe pitch the book again, or any closing remarks, thoughts?
Well, as I mentioned, I really, I loved this book that came secretly from and since birthdays is, Christmas is coming, I think would be an ideal one for people, particularly who know quite a few of those people who are talking about.
Yeah, or for psychonauts on the way, could be a nice Christmas present. So.
Great.
So anyway, just thank you once more. It was wonderful to do it. Yeah.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for this time together and this wonderful conversation.
And again, thank you very much. It's wonderful to work with somebody who knows what is happening, and it's a wonderful work to do it, in spite of the fact that I'm not talking very well.
Well, you talk well enough, I guess.
You're doing wonderful. Yes. Thank you. It's such an honor and pleasure.
Amazing.
It really is.
Appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Much love.
Much love. Bye-bye.